So I'm not a very big fan of what the NSA's been up to lately. The mass spying on the American people and the people abroad. But one argument I hear in the defense of the NSA's activity is if you're not a terrorist, then you have nothing to fear from them. If you're not doing anything illegal, you have nothing to fear and no problem with them. And I take issue with that, and I'm going to explain why. Recently, we found out that they've actually been collecting information on pornography habits and such online in order to discredit what they refer to as jihadist radicalizers. So basically, if someone's getting too radical and they might be a threat, they'll release that information on them. So now you might be thinking, okay, so they're looking up this dirty stuff about terrorists, but if you're not a terrorist, you have nothing to fear, right? Well, I remain skeptical that they'll only use it on terrorists and they won't use it on legitimate figures. Why am I skeptical? Because government agencies have discredited legitimate figures in pretty much that exact way in the past. The infamous example which I'm going to bring up is from J. Edgar Hoover. When he was part of a government agency, the FBI. Well, it was 1965. Martin Luther King was getting pretty big. He'd given his speech at Washington. And J. Edgar Hoover didn't like what Martin Luther King Jr. was up to. He thought that Martin Luther King was a communist and a radicalizer. So he had his people look up information, dig up dirt on Martin Luther King, and what they found out is that he had been up to quite a lot of adultery. So later, an anonymous letter, which you can probably guess was from J. Edgar Hoover, was sent to Martin Luther King, telling Martin Luther King, "We know what you did. We know about your adultery, and we will expose you. And the only way to stop it is..." And then he strongly implied that he wanted Martin Luther King Jr. to commit suicide. And you can look this up. I posted a link to an article about it in the description. This is pretty much proven that this was actually happened to Martin Luther King, who's now pretty much considered one of the greatest people in American history. And if they did it then, I'm pretty sure they would do it again. If they were willing to use their authority and abuse it to try to do this kind of stuff and harass legitimate politicians then, I see no reason why they won't do it now. So I think that's something to consider when you really look at how much information the NSA has. And this whole video I've been talking about the NSA looking into Americans' affairs and looking at people and spying at people. So I think I'm going to just end this video on a much brighter note about looking into space by showing the latest and best quality photo NASA took of Pluto yesterday. So, Cuttlefish out.